Hello everyone, we are the group that is focusing on children's illustration from the 1850s to the 1960s, and today the author we are talking about is Beatrix Potter. Beatrix Potter has tales inspired by nature, but our project is based off of the main one, which is the tale of Peter Rabbit. So the artist who created the tale of Peter Rabbit, Helen Beatrix Potter, was born on July 28, 1866. She was born into a middle-class or bourgeoisie family that was fortunate to have money passed down to them from a cotton trade. As a child, she was very adventurous outdoors, and she quickly came to love many things about it. Unfortunately for Beatrix, she did not get along well with her family, and she had to quickly remove herself from them. Clearly, she was a rebel. In the time she did spend with her family, her father and mother were very encouraging of her to be in the arts. She also has studied from artists that we are familiar with in the class that will be discussed later. As a female artist, she was not able to share her research that helped develop her drawings. But of course, during these times, only men were allowed to come into these meetings, so she never got to display her art or sold any.
Helen Beatrix Potter's loneliness as a child led her to find inspiration through nature. From a young age, Potter picked up an interest in sketching animals such as frogs and mice from her garden. Potter spent most of her time outside sketching plants, animals, and insects, which allowed her to pick up an interest in natural sciences. Potter studied plants, fungi, and insects. These studies are reflected in her artwork and ultimately led to her using watercolor on her works of art. Potter was also inspired by her father and oftentimes copied some of his work. As Potter got older, she studied the works of John Constable and M.W. Turner, who were all Romanticism artists. Potter's interest in Romanticism put emphasis on her imaginative works of art and helped portray her individual style. You are able to see that in many illustrations where she illustrated animals and their environment. Potter is able to use the beauty of nature around her to make an ethereal fantasy. In her illustrations and paintings, there is a strong line presence which is inspired by the Art Nouveau era. These lines are especially pronounced in her illustrations. The lines that Potter makes are more organic in nature and have curvature. Potter's work is also very decorative and ornamental. Potter uses shapes and lines, and that makes her work more elegant and brings out its true beauty.
Helen Beatrix Potter took many inspirations in her artwork, as well as a very unique style. Here we have some of her illustrations where we can see the influence of Romanticism and Art Nouveau. The materials commonly known to Potter's art medium are watercolor that she used throughout all of her illustrations and her sketches. Potter often took to nature as a child, which stuck with her throughout her adult life, leading to many of her wonderful illustrations full of imagination. The style of Romanticism allowed her to explore and expand her appreciation of nature throughout her artwork, from mice to rats and other animals she would encounter. She would draw as well people and landscapes. As well as Romanticism, Potter also took inspiration from the Art Nouveau period, where the heavy use of line is prominent in her art style. In the example of her mice illustrations, we can see that she goes in with lots of details, given three-dimensional form to her mice and other animals, and outlines them with a very heavy flowing line and has organic line movement.
The tale of Peter Rabbit started out with Potter writing illustrated letters to her former governess's son, where she would write stories about Peter, his family, and his misadventures in Mr. McGregor's garden. Peter was created based on one of her rabbits named Peter Piper. The settings for the stories were inspired from her surroundings. For example, Mr. McGregor's garden was based on the garden from the house that she had rented in Lake District. The book was rejected by 6 publishers, which led Potter to make copies and publish the book all by herself. The book then sold around 250 copies. She designed the book to be small in order to fit the hands of children. Adding on, the illustrations were originally done in black and white. After the success of her self-published book, Frederick Warne and Company offered to publish her book in exchange for her to re-illustrate the work in color. The Tales of Peter Rabbit then had a total of 23 published tales and became a bestseller in October 1902, which led to the publications of 6 different editions.
So the 3 artworks that we are presenting is what we have created over the span of the semester. We first started with choosing the most 3 important scenes, which is obviously the beginning, middle, and end, and we just did that by voting. Then we all brainstormed on how we wanted the illustrations to look, and then actually splitting up the work to make the illustrations. So our whole process was one person would start with the first step, which was sketch, and then the next person would do the line art, and then coloring and lighting, and then finally adding the font to narrate the story.
My name is Ashley Sanchez, and I worked on the sketches for the illustrations.
So I'm Tran, hi, and I worked on the line art for the illustrations.
My name is Joyce and I worked on the coloring for the illustrations.
My name is Amber Taylor and I worked on the fonts for our illustrations.
So this pretty much concludes our presentation. Feel free to pause the video to read the narration on our illustrations. There's also going to be sources and a page of who did what for the project at the end. Thank you for watching.